In a battle of the numbers, the evens were victorious, and that was against all odds. Oh, what's going on, YouTube? So today I've done the unthinkable. I opened Reddit. Now I know what you're thinking, Jake. What in the world are you doing? But I saw this flash pop up on my screen of something that had been upvoted. It was titled, "New Player Doesn't Understand." And the heads and tails of it is, and we'll talk about it in the video, is that a new player, used what I would say is a recommended set combination, went into PvP and didn't work out so well. So I thought to myself, well, let's break down what they could do differently, what they should experiment with. And if you're finding yourself in the same situation because it's been upvoted, it's got a lot of people talking about it, this is probably a pretty common occurrence. And I am actually a huge proponent of building your own way for PvP, and the reasons for doing so we're going to kind of break down in this video. Before we do, though, we're on the road to 16,000 subscribers. I am building a boat off here in the distance. If that doesn't win your subscription, in full, the comment reads, "New player doesn't understand Templar. I'm a brand new player and just got my Templar to 160 CP. All the guides online to say run War Maidens and Deadly, so I do so. I go into PvP and I'm doing no damage at all. I can use my entire Magicka bar and not even deal 1/8 of the top HP bar of an AFK player, and that same player came back and heavy attacked me once and then Executioner, and I died in 1 second. I don't understand how I don't do any damage. It can still die in 1 second, and I'm in PvP, and in PvE I'm at 13k DPS, so I can't solo anything either." So there's a lot to break down here. The biggest question that I actually had off the bat, which unfortunately is not answered in any of the subsequent follow-ups, is what are they using for their other two pieces? Because essentially what they're wearing is 2 DPS sets. The other thing too is they don't talk about the skills that they use, and they don't talk about the type of content. For example, did they go to Grey Host? Did they go to Battlegrounds? Did they duel somebody? That we unfortunately do not know, and that's important. Because if you go to Grey Host, for example, you're 160 CP, they could be at 3,000 CP, and that's going to be a pretty big difference, especially if you're not speccing into champion points, if you're not speccing into a little bit of bulk, everyone else will be, and you're unfortunately not going to have it. So that's a pretty big, important difference. The other thing, too, is these sets can be pretty synergistic, but you have to also use specific skills. Now, my part of this video is not necessarily to break down which specific sets synergize very well with each other. And this is meant to be more of a holistic thing. But for example, Deadly is for channeled abilities. War Maiden is also for a very specific purpose as well. And that purpose is, add 600 weapon and spell to your magic damage ability. So you obviously have to be using these things to make sure that you're actually getting that benefit. Because if you're not, well, then you might as well be wearing nothing. So that's an important distinction as well. The really big important thing, though, is I think your monster set are mythical, because a lot of, and I've explained this before, for PvP is very different than PvE, and PvE is gatekeeped very hard, and I just want to kind of address that very quickly too, because he does mention PvE, so let's just get that out of the way. PvE is different from PvP because objectively there is the best way to do DPS in PvE. Just there's an objective. These set combinations objectively deal the most damage in a trial. They synergize the best with other team members who can then deal more damage, whatever. There's an objectively a mathematical best for that. I don't like how everyone seems to believe that newer players can't come in and be pretty analytical and try to experiment with DPS sets, because I think that we don't have to turn over to the fair few people who know how to parse very well and how to crunch numbers. I think anyone can crunch numbers and see and test different things. I think we gatekeep that a little bit too much. But the other important thing too that he mentions in PvP or PvE, is he hit 13,000. I assume that was on a dummy, but he doesn't say which dummy it was. For example, you're going to hit very high on a trial dummy. I would wager, I would bet that he's not hitting 13,000 on a trial dummy. Now, he might have hit one of the smaller ones, like the Ordinator, and maybe hit 13,000, and that would make more logistical sense in my mind. but I don't think you're not going to hit less than probably 20-30,000 on a trial dummy using that set combination, unless you're parsing, you're not really following a specific parsing, you're constantly having to light attack. But even still, the reason why is that the higher the dummy is, there's the little baby dummy and then there's the trial dummy. The trial dummy gives you a bunch of buffs, the same buffs that you would generally get from other players. So you generally deal like pretty good damage. But set that to the side because that was just more so for PvE. Let's go back to PvP. And I have always explained that generally you have to do one of two things to kill people in PvP. You have to have burst, and it can either come from your sets or it can come from your skills. Now, the interesting thing about a Templar is that Templars don't have as much burst potential, in my opinion, as other classes from their skills. So sometimes they rely on it more so from their sets. And what that means is that how do you get burst from a set? Well, there's a couple different ways that you can do so. Basically, when something happens, something else happens. And generally, you want something that's going to give you a lot of damage. So, for example, we'll just use the Master's Inferno Staff as an example. Reduces the cost of destructive touch, but increases your weapon and spell damage by 600 for 4 seconds after using it. So, you slot this on your X bar or X button. You hit X, now you have an extra 600 weapon and spell damage. That's a lot. Now, you could make a whole bunch of sets that pair together to do these types of things and then, activate, different wombo combos. I have a whole video breaking down different sets in different ways, proc versus no proc, the benefits, and, so on and so forth. The main problem is that if you're not utilizing and getting burst from your skills and you're not getting it from your sets, basically you might hit people for a decent chunk of damage, but it's always going to be very similar. You're not going to surprise them. You're not going to be doing any sort of damage that really, takes them by surprise. They can kind of gauge in their mind how they can steadily heal through your attacks, but also prepare either their procs or their combo to take you out. And the reason why that's important is that, as it's stated in this post, it sounds like something like that occurred. He almost two-shot him. So he could have done something, where he built up an attack, built up in a combo, put something on them. He could have used an ultimate. He could have done half a dozen different things. And we, unfortunately, are not 100% certain. But here are my tips if you find yourself in this situation where you don't feel like you're getting a lot of benefit from PvP sets. Well, step one is don't experiment in Grey Host. Point blank, don't go there unless you are expecting to play against some of the best ball groups, the best solo players, and people with high CP. It's just the way it is. It's not a bad thing. I think I go to Grey Host quite frequently and I enjoy it, but you also have to know what you're expecting. It's always about your expectations as to what you're going to be going into. What would I recommend instead? Battlegrounds, 100%. Well, your CP is not going to be active, so this person was 160. It's going to be significantly better, and you're going to be able to get a little bit more, practice in for your skills. Because I would say that you're probably going to want to perhaps look at some different skills when you're looking at the Templar, if you want to use those sets, or you might want to swap out for some of those sets for maybe something a little bit more proc heavy that'll give you a little bit more bang for your buck. Because Templars are pretty easy to pilot, but they're also what I would refer to as very predictable. And sometimes that can be very problematic when you're fighting against more experienced players who know exactly what you're going to do combo-wise, and really they know what the tools in your toolkit are, and you might not know what the tools in their toolkit are. So that's where it could become a little bit tricky and a little bit more, you have a little bit of a disadvantage. So what I generally encourage people to do is when they make a new character, they're trying to level up, by the way, double XP right now if you're watching the video in the next couple days, go to Battlegrounds on a 10 to 50 character. Even if you have a warden that you've never used before in PvP, you get to actually see people use skills, you get to experiment with those skills. It might not be flawless, and I'm sure that it won't be, but I think that there's something to be gained from using every class, seeing what they generally build for, and then knowing what to expect. Now, obviously, that's a very time-consuming way to do it, but I do think that in the long run, it is very rewarding to do it that way. So I think that that's a great tip. play on multiple classes, do those battlegrounds, and even if you're obviously over, level 50, continue to do those battlegrounds. It's great XP, great rewards, and it's also a great way to practice against people who a lot of times are just trying to get their daily rewards. Like, yes, they're going to try to win, but they're not trying to, go uber sweaty, and do all these crazy things. Yes, you'll see people make clips and stuff and flex online and go, oh, look, I got, 30 kills in a whatever match. Oh, yay. Yeah, that'll happen every so often. But there is also an ELO system, which is a matchmaking system to put you against, similar like-minded players as well, with equal or around skill level. So that's also an important distinction versus Cyrodiil. It's just whoever's there. And Imperial City is, kind of a crapshoot as to who's there. So let's say you find yourself in this situation and you're like, I don't know what sets to use. I don't know what I should experiment with. Let me tell you something here. I'm a man that's experimented a lot. This is just what I have on my inventory for my sorcerer. But here's the thing. I don't always start by changing the set. A lot of times, the first thing I'll do is I'll look at changing my enchantments, changing my Mundastone, changing my buff food, changing my potions, because you can get a lot of extra resources and stats from there also, and then you don't have to go and change your sets around. A lot of times, your sets are just kind of either working for you, especially if you're using non-proc sets. Now, if you're using a Templar, I would suggest using some sort of proc set and then getting really good at knowing how it procs and combining it with other procs. For example, that could be as simple as using, a Clever Alchemist, and every time you use a potion, you get a whole big bottle of, weapon and spell damage. It could be as simple as that. And then too, Clever Alchemist also really comes with some nice health, which will also be really helpful. The other thing too is we don't know their stat breakdown. I would say make sure you have at least the ability to get over 30,000 health when you're in a fight with another player. If not only are you wearing 2 DPS sets, but everyone's going to see how little health you have and go, ooh, let's go take this boy's cheeks. And you don't want to get your cheeks taken. That's not a fun experience. So that's my other suggestion is don't always, throw the sets under the bus when you can always tweak other things too. Because Deadly and War Maiden, while probably not something that I would combine together, you could always slap on something like the Gaze of Sithis. Slap that bad boy on there. There's your one piece, set that's going to be able to give you some resistance. Maybe even Death Dealer's Feet could be another option. That's going to then give you some free, essentially, resistance, health, depending on which one of the two you're using. And that could be a good option for you. And then one piece, you could just get either a tri-stat, one piece monster set, or something along those lines. And that could be a really good option for you. Now, I would question your ability to burst and your ability to kill people very quickly in that range, but that might be something that you could experiment with, like potions, using potions maybe that either regen like ultimate, give you, different buffs to deal more damage, that could be a way to handle it. But the biggest problem that people have for PvP is summarized very simply. Everyone plays the game differently. And why is that a problem? Well, it's a problem because, you might spend more time away from conflict. You might run into conflict. You might, like to try to finagle angles so you're not getting hit as much. You might get hit all the time because you just, charge their head first in every time and just like to see what happens and, wham those combos down. You might be like to someone that plays, from here or afar. You might like to solo specific players. You might like to tap target. You might like to drop AoEs. The problem is that we are all so different. And you have to experiment with your playstyle. Because if you don't, then you're just copying the way that somebody else plays. And that's not going to help you. Because you're not them. And they're not you. That's the problem. And that's what I always want to hit a home upon whenever I'm talking about a build guide. Especially for PvP. PvE is a little bit different. Before I get comments below. And my cat has decided that she will get all of your guys' attention. And try to move the mic away. And get me to stop recording so I can play with her. But that's the big takeaway from this video is you're all different. So experiment with different buff foods, potions, mythicals, monster sets, DPS sets, skill lineups. You can certainly try other people's, but if you're trying, let's say you're taking a Deltia's video out and you're like, I'm going to copy his build. See how he plays. Watch him. Now, I always am also a big proponent of like, well, if a person is making, like if I'm a YouTuber, right? I make YouTube videos. Let's say I made the video #1 Sork build, 1000 gigafarts of damage per millisecond. You'd be like, whoa, it's a lot of damage. And I just, you watch the video, it's just a kill compilation of me just put people in the dirt. Well, here's the problem. You don't know how often I died. You don't know how many times it took for me to get those clips. And that's a pretty important thing. So I actually encourage you to watch live streams over videos of people who are doing PvP, because then you get to see the whole experience, not just the quick clips, edited gameplay of the, oh, well, this is how the set did. Look at this one, situation, and then look at this other really good clip, and then this other really good clip. I know you guys get the point, but like, I am terrible at Warzone. But if you were to check my history, you would see all these clips that make me look like a god at Warzone, because 1 in every 100 matches, my brain just, gets it together, and then bam, I can finally do it. Same with FIFA and other games. Sometimes, it just happens. I get, taken over, by Messi or somebody, and I can finally comprehend what I'm supposed to do, in FIFA. It's the same with Elder Scrolls Online. Now, not to dissuade you from looking at other people's videos and hearing them talk about it, I just always like to put that little bug in people's ears, like, you're watching what somebody else is doing and it's an edited video, just, take that, a grain of salt. But dear friends, I hope this video was helpful. This is not kind of what I was expecting to do today, but I thought that's a really good question. And I always think that, I get a lot of comments and see a lot of posts out there where it's a lot of like specific hypotheticals. And I thought, let's break this one down specifically, talk about it in depth, different changes, different set combinations, and so on. So kind of in conclusion, what are some of the things that I would suggest if you are a Templar? I think that Clever Alch is a great ease of access. It's got a lot of health already built into it, so it could save you on using health enchants to push your health up to over that 30,000 plus mark. It's very easy to proc. It gets you into using potions. Other ones are things like Rallying Cry, or other really good proc sets that are pretty good. Deadly is a very good Templar set, don't get me wrong. And I think that could pair very well with something, like those sets, like Rallying Cry. But then you're probably going to want something a little bit more defensive. Gaze's Sithis is a perfectly usable mythical for a Templar. And then using like a 1-piece Swarm Mothers if you're Magicka, maybe like Stone Keepers to get health, mag, and stam. Those are all going to be great options for you. And if you don't want to use a mythical, Mighty Chudin could be a decent one, or Ice Heart could be a decent one. Bloodspawn could be a decent one. There's a lot of different ways you can build it, but don't think that you have to just change the sets. You could always switch your Mundus to a health Mundus. Maybe switch it to a defense Mundus. Give yourself like the Lady. Give yourself a little bit more resistance. There's a lot of things you can try before just changing out sets and everything else. And don't forget the type of content you're doing. If everyone's got 2,000 plus CP points on you, that's going to be a noticeable difference against you. So take all of that with a grain of salt. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. We are doing our 3 giveaway drawings, 1 random like, 1 random subscriber, and then a random word/audio cue will be flashed upon the screen throughout the month. You comment the word first in the comments below and you will win. Thank you guys so much again for watching. Thank you for all the comments suggesting videos, and I'll catch you later. Bye, guys.
You better remember to like and subscribe to Jake Clips. Or you should. I might have to pluck your eyes if you don't. Or, better yet, I'll skip rope with your entrails. Do it now. Subscribe. Ta-ta. Off with you.
Hope you guys had a great weekend. Thankfully, I get to use some of my emergency duty time from working on Saturday, take off on Tuesday. So excited to make some more videos. Put those in the comments below, suggestions. I always love them, and I'll see you there. Peace.